Commander Olivia Harmon stood at the viewport of the USS Defiance, staring into the endless void of space. The stars seemed dimmer today, or perhaps it was just her mood. The galactic transmission had arrived 3 hours ago, and with it, humanity's fate among the stars had been sealed. Lieutenant Kelly Wright approached silently, sliding a tablet across the command console. Her face was tight with anger. Her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. They want us to surrender everything we've built. The message from the Galactic Council displayed in harsh blue text across the screen. Humans were deemed too unpredictable, too innovative, and ultimately too dangerous to participate in space combat operations. Effective immediately, Earth's fleet was to be dismantled, weapons systems disabled, and combat personnel reassigned to non-military roles. Olivia's fingers traced the Council's official seal on the document. It's more than unfair. Kelly, it's a death sentence we're surrounded by. The Vraxian Empire on 3 fronts. Without defenses, our colonies will fall within weeks. The Council's ruling cited 17 incidents where human tactics had violated established combat protocols. What they called violations, Earth's military had called survival. The Vraxians wouldn't hesitate once they learned humans had been declawed. Kelly pounded her fist against the metal wall, leaving a small dent. 15 years I've served, fought in 6 major engagements, lost friends. Now they tell us to lay down and die. A soft chime indicated another presence at the bridge door. Admiral Nancy Porter entered, her uniform pristine. Despite the late hour, her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her face expressionless as always. But Olivia knew her well enough to see the fire burning behind those calm eyes. The bridge crew stood at attention. Porter waved them back to their stations. Her voice remained level, measured. Make it look like we're complying. Meanwhile, Project Shadowcast goes into effect immediately. Olivia felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. She had heard whispers about Shadowcast, a classified initiative so secret that even most high-ranking officers knew nothing about it, only that it involved experimental technology being developed in hidden facilities beneath the icy surface of Titan. Are we really going through with it? Admiral Porter met her gaze steadily. Humanity didn't come this far in space to be exterminated because we refuse to fight according to alien rules. The Council has existed for 50,000 years. They've grown complacent. We haven't. The Admiral pulled up a secure holographic display showing the location of all Earth's major fleet assets. She highlighted 3 battle groups. Officially, these vessels will return to Earth for decommissioning. Unofficially, they'll rendezvous at these coordinates. She indicated a point in deep space far from established monitoring stations. Kelly studied the coordinates. What about the Council observers? They're on half our ships. Porter's smile was cold. The observers will see exactly what we want them to see. She handed Olivia a small data chip. Insert this into the ship's main computer. Once you're clear of the station, it contains modified operational protocols that will fool the monitoring systems. Olivia clutched the chip, understanding the enormous responsibility being placed in her hands. The Defiance wasn't just any ship. It was one of Earth's newest, most advanced vessels. If anyone could evade Council detection, it would be them. If they failed, humanity might not get another chance. As the Admiral turned to leave, she paused. One more thing, Commander. Her voice dropped lower. Every ship in the fleet is receiving similar orders, but each with different destinations, different missions. The Council has ears everywhere. This compartmentalization is necessary. Olivia nodded, understanding perfectly. The less she knew about the other ship's missions, the better. If captured, she could reveal only her part of the plan. Once the Admiral left, Kelly moved closer. You think it's true what they say about Shadowcast? That we've discovered something that changes everything? Olivia inserted the chip into her secure terminal, watching a strange code float across the screen. I think humanity just got backed into a corner. And historically, that's when we're most dangerous. The ship's AI system pulsed as it absorbed the new programming. Olivia could almost feel the vessel changing around them, becoming something different, something undetectable. The lighting dimmed briefly, then returned to normal, but somehow altered. Navigation Officer Melanie Tran looked up from her station, confused. Course is still set for Earth, but the underlying protocols have changed. "We're actually heading to the Titan base," she said, her voice tinged with wonder. "Yet the official logs will show us returning to Earth." Kelly's eyes widened. "How is that possible?" "The Council monitoring systems are integrated into our nav computers," Olivia watched as the stars began to shift outside the viewport as the Defiance prepared to enter lightspeed. The Admiral was right. The rules have changed in the ship's engineering bay. Chief Engineer Diane Miller received the automated alert that the special protocols were active. Her team had spent months preparing for this day, installing hidden systems, bypassing safety protocols, creating a vessel that could operate as a ghost in plain sight. Diane opened a secure channel to her engineering. "Crew test phase is complete," she announced. "This is not a drill. Activate shadow systems and prepare for extended covert operations." Throughout the massive vessel, hundreds of crew members began their carefully rehearsed procedures. Each had been selected specifically for this mission. Each understood that they were now part of humanity's last hope. As the Defiance accelerated away from the space station, its official transponder signal indicated compliance with Council directives. But its true destination remained hidden from all outside observers. Olivia settled into the command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility. The next few weeks would determine whether humans remained a free species or became subjects of the Galactic Council, and eventually, pray for the Vraxians. Kelly took her position at the tactical station, a new determination in her stance. "If they want to ban us from space combat, we'll have to show them why they were right to fear us in the first place." The Defiance jumped to lightspeed, disappearing from conventional sensors, its true mission concealed from allies and enemies alike. Their destination Titan. The future of humanity uncertain, but the will to survive stronger than any Council decree. The secret facility buried beneath Titan's icy surface hummed with activity. Dr. Susan Blackwood moved between workstations, her keen eyes analyzing data streams from a dozen simultaneous simulations. Her team of engineers and scientists worked with quiet intensity, knowing the fate of humanity might rest on their success. "The phase shift technology is stabilizing," she announced, checking the latest results. "We've managed to reduce the energy requirements by 63%. Project Shadowcast wasn't just about building better weapons. It was about fundamentally changing how spacecraft operated in battle. The Council's rules were built around conventional physics, predictable trajectories, measurable energy signatures, detectable communications. Susan's team had spent 5 years developing technology that operated outside those parameters. Captain Lisa Monroe watched from an observation deck as the prototype vessel, codenamed Spectre, underwent its final modifications. Unlike the bulky, heavily armored Council ships, Spectre was sleek, almost delicate in appearance. Its hull shimmered with a strange iridescence, the result of exotic materials that could alter their quantum state. "It doesn't look like much," came a voice from behind her, Admiral. Porter had arrived unannounced, as was her habit. "It doesn't need to," Lisa replied. "When it can phase shift between dimensional planes, armor becomes secondary." "How soon?" the Admiral asked, her voice betraying nothing. Though Lisa knew the question carried enormous weight. 2 weeks for the prototype. 3 months for the first battle group. Porter's expression remained neutral, but her eyes revealed her concern. "The Vraxians won't wait that long. Intelligence suggests they're already positioning for a first strike against our outer colonies. They believe we've been weakened by the Council's ban." Lisa turned back to the viewport. "Then we'll need a diversion in the adjacent hangar bay." Commander Tanya Rodriguez was briefing a select group of pilots on what would become known as Operation Firewall, a seemingly desperate last stand that would serve to hide humanity's true intentions from both the Council and the Vraxians. 30 pilots stood at attention, each handpicked for both skill and psychological profile. They needed to be exceptional fighters, but also capable of following a battle plan that deliberately avoided total victory. Not an easy combination to find among Earth's best pilots. "We'll be outnumbered and outgunned," Tanya explained, exactly as they expect us to be. "Our job isn't to win, it's to survive long enough and collect the combat data. Dr. Blackwood needs to perfect the phase shift technology." In the back of the room, Specialist Michelle Kim raised her hand. "We're being set up as sacrificial lambs." Tanya's expression softened slightly. "No, We're being asked to fight in a way that looks conventional. She activated a holographic display showing the Spectre. Meanwhile, this is what we're really bringing to the fight, the pilots murmured. As they studied the strange vessel, Michelle stepped closer. What exactly are we looking at? Commander Tanya expanded the hologram, highlighting the ship's unique propulsion system. The Spectre can partially shift into an adjacent dimension, becoming effectively invisible and intangible to conventional weapons. While shifted, it can still affect our dimension in limited ways. Another pilot frowned. But if it's in another dimension, how can it attack? It doesn't attack in the traditional sense. Tanya explained it can create localized dimensional disruptions, causing enemy systems to fail, or even removing portions of enemy vessels from our reality temporarily. The implications hung in the air. If they couldn't be detected, they couldn't be targeted. If conventional weapons passed right through them, they couldn't be destroyed. And if they could remove parts of enemy ships from reality without firing a shot, they weren't technically violating the Council's combat ban back in the main laboratory. Susan worked alongside her chief engineer, Molly Davis, calibrating the phase drive. The two women had been friends since their university days, their complementary skills making them a formidable team. Susan handled theoretical physics, while Molly turned those theories into working technology. Molly wiped sweat from her forehead as she made a minute adjustment to the drive's core. There's still the problem with sensor delay. While shifted, the ship experiences a 3-second lag in all sensor readings. Susan nodded thoughtfully. That's going to make combat maneuvers tricky. The pilots will need to develop new instincts. Admiral Porter entered the lab, followed by Captain Monroe. Have we solved the radiation issue? Molly straightened up. Yes. Each shift creates a brief burst of theta radiation, but we've developed a containment field that absorbs 98% of it. The remainder is negligible. What about detection? Porter asked. Can the radiation be traced? Susan shook her head. Not, unless someone knows exactly what to look for. The energy signature masquerades as background cosmic radiation. The Council's sensors aren't calibrated to distinguish it. Good Porter accessed a secure terminal, bringing up tactical displays of Vraxian fleet movements. The first wave has already departed their staging area. They'll reach Newton Colony in approximately 72 hours. Lisa studied the tactical display. That's too soon for Spectre to be ready. Porter's face hardened. That's why Operation Firewall goes into effect now. The conventional fleet will engage and appear to struggle, but hold just long enough. Meanwhile, we accelerate Spectre's timetable. Susan started to object, but Porter cut her off. I know the risks, Doctor, but we don't have a choice. The Vraxians are moving faster than anticipated. We need Spectre operational in 48 hours, not 2 weeks. The weight of the Admiral's words settled over the room. Susan exchanged glances with Molly. They'd been pushing the boundaries of physics, working with theoretical technology that had never been tested in actual combat conditions. Now they were being asked to deploy it prematurely. We'll make it work, Susan finally said. But I want Lieutenant Chambers as the pilot. She's been integrated with our simulations from the beginning. She understands the theory behind the technology. Porter nodded. Lieutenant Beth Chambers has already been transferred here. She arrives in 6 hours. Make sure she's ready. As the Admiral departed, Molly whispered, This is insanity. We haven't even completed the final calibrations. Susan began reconfiguring the testing protocols. Then we'll have to skip some steps. The fate of humanity is at stake here. Molly, we don't have the luxury of perfect conditions. Throughout the facility, engineers, scientists, and military personnel worked with renewed urgency. Sleep was forgotten. Meals skipped. The Spectre was rolled out of its construction bay into the final testing chamber, its systems powered up to full capacity for the first time in another section of the base. Beth Chambers arrived ahead of schedule, immediately reporting to the simulation room she'd been flying experimental aircraft since she was 22, but nothing like this. She spent every available minute in the simulator, learning to navigate while dealing with the disorienting effects of phase shifting. Meanwhile, the first reports came in from the outer colonies. The Vraxian fleet had been spotted earlier than expected. Commander Rodriguez accelerated the deployment of Operation Firewall. The USS Dauntless, along with 5 other supposedly decommissioned vessels, moved into defensive positions around Newton Colony. Their presence immediately reported to the Council by observers who believed they were witnessing a desperate last stand by rogue human captains. No one outside the Shadowcast program knew that these ships were deliberately drawing attention, a carefully orchestrated diversion to keep all eyes away from Titan on the testing chamber floor. Susan and Molly made the final adjustments to Spectre's phase drive. The ship hummed with power systems balanced on the edge of theoretical physics. Beth Chambers strapped herself into the pilot seat running through pre-flight checks. Her voice steady despite the pressure. "I've never flown anything real that handles like this. It breaks all the rules." "That's exactly the point," Susan replied through the communication system. "The Council made rules based on how they think space combat should work. We're not playing that game anymore." Admiral Porter watched from the control room as the countdown began. The Vraxian attack on Newton Colony was underway. Operation Firewall was in motion, and humanity's true response was about to take its first real flight. Spectre's engines ignited with a strange distortion of light rather than the conventional plasma flare. The ship rose silently, hovering in the test chamber. Beth's voice came through calm and focused. "All systems nominal. Phase drive initializing." Susan held her breath as energy readings spiked. Then something remarkable happened. The sleek vessel seemed to blur at the edges, becoming translucent, then nearly invisible. A slight shimmer in the air was the only indication it still existed. "Phase shift successful," came Beth's delayed voice. "We've done it. We've actually done it." Porter's normally stoic expression broke into a rare smile. "Now let's go rewrite the rules of war." The Vraxian attack came sooner than expected. Their warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, a fleet so vast it blotted out the stars. Their vessels were massive constructs of dark metal and glowing energy fields, each one bristling with conventional weapons, the kind approved by Galactic Council regulations. From the bridge of the USS Dauntless, one of Earth's supposedly decommissioned vessels, Colonel Sandra West watched the enemy approach. On paper, her ship was now a scientific research vessel. In reality, it retained all its military capabilities hidden beneath false energy signatures and modified hull plating. "They're deploying in standard Vraxian formation," reported Tactical Officer Amy Jones. 3. Tier assault pattern. "They're not even trying to be subtle." Sandra nodded grimly. "They don't think they need to be broadcast the distress signal to the Council." "Make it look good." Communications Officer Carly Foster composed her voice to sound appropriately. Panicked. "This is USS Dauntless to all Council vessels. We are under attack by Vraxian forces. Request immediate assistance. Our weapon systems have been decommissioned as ordered. We cannot defend ourselves. Within minutes, the Council's observation. Post acknowledged the signal, sending the expected response. Non-intervention protocols in effect. Defensive measures only." Sandra allowed herself a small smile. That was the response they'd been counting on. The Council wouldn't interfere, but they'd given permission for defensive measures, which meant the human ships could fire back without technically violating the ban. And more importantly, all eyes would be on this battle, not on what was happening behind Proxima Centauri's moon. The first Vraxian barrage hit the Dauntless's shields with devastating force. The ship rocked violently, systems flickering. Emergency power kicked in, stabilizing the shield grid. The bridge crew held on to their stations, many playing up the appearance of panic and confusion for the benefit of the Council observer stationed on the bridge return fire. Sandra ordered conventional weapons. Only, remember, we need to appear outmatched, but defiant. The Dauntless's main cannons responded, sending bright pulses of energy toward the lead Vraxian vessels. The shots were deliberately aimed to cause damage but not catastrophic failure. The human fleet needed to look like they were fighting desperately and losing gradually. As the battle unfolded, the Dauntless and its companion vessels followed the carefully choreographed plan, fighting just well enough to remain in the fight, but appearing to gradually lose ground. With each exchange, massive amounts of combat data were being collected and transmitted via quantum entanglement to the Titan facility, completely undetectable to both the Vraxians and the Council observers. The quantum entanglement transmitters were humanity's best-kept secret. Even the Council didn't know Earth possessed this technology, allowing instantaneous communication across any distance with no detectable signal, behind the moon of Proxima Centauri b, hidden from both enemy and ally alike. The Spectre powered up its systems for the first time in actual combat conditions. Lieutenant Beth Chambers sat at the helm, her hands steady despite the weight of responsibility. The ship had been transported to this position in a conventional vessel disguised as a supply ship before being deployed phase shift drive at nominal level. She reported dimensional variance stable at 0.03. Beside her, Dr. Blackwood made a final adjustment to the ship's unique navigation system. Remember, while shifted conventional sensors won't detect you, but you'll experience a 3-second delay in your own sensor readings. Plan accordingly. Beth nodded. Understood. Preparing for phase shift in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Spectre shimmered briefly before seeming to dissolve into nothingness. It had not turned invisible. It had partially shifted into an adjacent dimension, becoming intangible to normal space, while retaining the ability to observe and crucially to affect objects in normal space. Beth felt a momentary disorientation as the ship transitioned between dimensional states. The view screen showed a strange version of reality colors, slightly altered energy patterns visible that normally remained hidden. The Vraxian ships appeared surrounded by hazy coronas of power, their engines burning with unnatural brightness. She guided the Spectre through the battlefield completely undetected. The ship passed directly through debris and energy blasts as if they weren't there. The sensation was disconcerting. Like being a ghost among the solid. Susan monitored the phase stability. Readings were holding steady. Dimensional integrity at 97%. The theory works perfectly. Beth accelerated toward the Vraxian flagship, a massive vessel directing the assault. Its shields flared as it absorbed another hit from the Dauntless. The human ship now showing significant damage to its outer hull. Now comes the real test, Beth said as she positioned Spectre directly inside the Vraxian flagship, passing through its hull as if it were mist. Activating dimensional disruptors. The Spectre's most revolutionary weapons were not weapons at all, but devices that could project phase-shifting effects onto other objects. Targeted with precision, they could shift specific systems or components partially out of normal space, rendering them inoperable. Without any sign of attack, Beth activated the disruptors targeting the flagship's main power distribution nodes. The effect was immediate. Throughout the massive Vraxian vessel, critical systems began failing simultaneously. Weapons, shields, propulsion, all disabled by a ship that, according to every sensor, didn't exist. On the Vraxian bridge, confusion erupted as system after system went offline with no apparent cause. The ship's commander, a towering reptilian with ceremonial battle scars covering his scaled face, roared in frustration. Status report now. His officers scrambled to explain the inexplicable primary and secondary power grids failing. Weapons offline, shield generators unresponsive. But there's no sign of attack. No energy signatures, no projectiles, no radiation. All systems simply stopped functioning. Back on the Dauntless. Sandra observed the sudden change in the Vraxian flagship with carefully concealed satisfaction. "It's working," she whispered. The flagship's dead in space. The Council observer, a thin humanoid with pale blue skin, looked confused. "What's happening, Colonel?" "The Vraxians appear to be experiencing some kind of massive system failure." Sandra maintained her bewildered expression. "I have no idea. Perhaps they rushed their preparations. Their technology has always been temperamental." Throughout the Vraxian fleet, confusion spread as ship after ship reported similar inexplicable failures. Their tight formation broke apart as captains tried to escape whatever mysterious force was disabling their vessels. Some fired blindly into space, hoping to hit an unseen attacker. Others began emergency retreat procedures. Beth guided the Spectre from ship to ship, methodically disrupting critical systems without ever firing a conventional weapon. The phase-shifting drive performed flawlessly, allowing them to operate as a phantom among solid objects. Susan monitored the quantum readings with growing excitement. Every system is performing beyond expectations. The dimensional Stability is actually improving with use. The technology is adapting learning in the command center on Titan. Admiral Porter watched the battle through the quantum feed, her expression stern, but her eyes gleaming with vindication. The Council thinks they've eliminated us as a threat by banning our combat capabilities. They never imagined we'd develop something that operates entirely outside their understanding of warfare. The Vraxian commander ordered a full retreat, unable to explain what had happened to his fleet. The mighty armada that had arrived to crush the human defenses now fled in disarray, their confidence shattered. For the first time in centuries, the Vraxian Empire had been defeated not through superior firepower, but through technology they couldn't even detect. As the last enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, Beth guided the Spectre back toward the moon, keeping the vessel phased. The ship's energy reserves showed 70%, remaining more than enough to maintain their dimensional shift until they could rendezvous with their transport vessel mission accomplished. She reported, allowing herself a small smile for the first time since the operation began. Not a single shot fired on the Dauntless. Sandra opened a secure channel to Titan using the quantum entanglement communicator firewall. Operation successful. The Vraxians have retreated. We sustained damage, but all ships remain operational. As expected, the Council observers are completely baffled. Porter's voice came through clear and satisfied. Excellent work, Colonel. The Spectre exceeded all performance metrics. The phase-shifting technology has proven itself in combat conditions. Begin Phase 2. Maintain the appearance of a damaged fleet barely surviving the encounter. We need the Council to continue believing that we got lucky rather than clever. As the human ships regrouped, appearing battle-damaged and limping, the Council observer sent his own report to his superiors. Human forces engaged. Vraxian fleet despite combat restrictions. Minimal defensive measures employed as permitted ships severely damaged, but Vraxians retreated unexpectedly. Cause unknown possible. Vraxian technical malfunction. The deception was working perfectly. Council saw only what humans wanted them to see. A lucky escape rather than a revolutionary new form of warfare. A desperate defense rather than a calculated demonstration of power. As Beth brought the Spectre back to its hidden dock, she couldn't help but feel that everything had changed today. The rules of space combat, written by ancient civilizations and enforced for millennia, had just been. Word of the mysterious defeat spread quickly. The Vraxian Empire, for the first time in centuries, retreated from a battlefield in confusion. Their military leadership demanded explanations that no one could provide. Their sensors had recorded no unknown vessels, no experimental weapons, no unusual energy signatures. Their ships had simply stopped functioning, as if struck by some invisible force. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, demanding Earth representatives explain what had happened. During the tense meeting, General Danielle Clark stood calmly before the assembly of alien delegates. Her uniform was crisp, her posture perfect, betraying nothing of the satisfaction she felt. As per your directive, our combat vessels were decommissioned, she stated, her voice steady. We employed only defensive measures as permitted. Perhaps the Vraxians experienced some form of technical malfunction. The Council representatives exchanged skeptical glances, but could find no evidence to contradict her claim. Their own observation posts had detected no unauthorized human weapons fire. The observers stationed aboard human vessels reported nothing suspicious. The Vraxian ambassador, a massive reptilian figure adorned with ceremonial armor, slammed his clawed hand against the podium. This was no malfunction, he hissed. Human treachery is at work. General Clark maintained her composed expression. The Council's own observers were present on our vessels. They saw everything we did, followed all restrictions to the letter. We merely defended ourselves with permitted measures. Meanwhile, beneath Titan's surface, Project Shadowcast entered its second phase. The data from the Proxima Centauri engagement had proven invaluable, allowing Dr. Blackwood's team to refine the phase shift technology even further. We've increased shift stability by 27%, Susan explained to the gathered military leadership, and we've discovered something unexpected, a way to create localized phase bubbles that can be projected around other objects. Admiral Porter leaned forward. Meaning. We can phase shift enemy vessels or weapons fire into the dimensional boundary space. Susan clarified. Not fully into another dimension, but into a state where they can no longer interact with normal spacetime. The implications were staggering. Not only could human ships become effectively intangible, but they could force the same condition upon enemy vessels, all without firing a single conventional weapon. Captain Marie Foster, newly assigned to lead the second Spectre-class vessel. The Phantom raised the obvious concern. The Council will eventually figure out what we're doing. What then? Admiral Porter's response was surprisingly simple by then. It won't matter. We're not violating any of their combat protocols because we're operating outside the parameters they defined as combat. We're not using weapons in the conventional sense. We're manipulating the fabric of space-time itself. The engineers and scientists in the room exchanged glances, some nervous, others excited. All understood they were part of something revolutionary. The phase shift technology represented a paradigm shift in how warfare could be conducted. In the weeks that followed, the prototype Spectre underwent extensive modifications based on combat data. 5 new vessels were rushed into production, each incorporating improvements to the phase drive system. The crew selection process was rigorous. Candidates tested not only for piloting skills but for their ability to adapt to the disorienting experience of operating in dimensional shift. Beth Chambers, now promoted to captain, led the training program. Her experience as the first phase shift pilot made her uniquely qualified to prepare others. I won't lie to you, she told the assembled pilots during their first briefing. Flying a phase-shifted vessel changes everything you know about space navigation. The sensory delay takes getting used to objects that appear solid. Aren't conventional weapons pass right through you. But you're also flying blind in many ways. Sensors give delayed readings. Navigation becomes more art than science. In the main laboratory, Susan and Molly worked tirelessly on the next generation of phase shift technology. The system we used at Proxima Centauri was effective but limited, Molly explained to Admiral Porter. We could only target specific systems on enemy vessels. Now we've developed a way to create phase bubbles large enough to encompass entire ships. Susan activated a holographic simulation showing a Vraxian warship suddenly surrounded by a shimmering field. The vessel inside became translucent, partially phased out of normal spacetime. When we project a phase bubble around an enemy ship, it enters a state we call dimensional limbo. The ship remains intact but can no longer interact with normal space. It can't fire weapons, use shields, communicate, or move. Porter watched the simulation with intense focus. How long can these bubbles be maintained with current power systems? About 72 hours, Susan replied. But we're working on extending that indefinitely, and the bubbles can be collapsed at will, returning the ships to normal space whenever we choose. Perfect, Porter nodded. This gives us a non-lethal option. The Council can hardly object to us temporarily removing enemy ships from battle without destroying them or harming their crews. Intelligence reports indicated the Vraxians were preparing a second, larger offensive. Their pride wounded by the inexplicable defeat, they assembled an armada 3 times the size of the first. The Council, still suspicious but lacking evidence, placed additional observers on all registered human vessels. What the Council didn't know was that humanity now had 6 fully operational phase shift vessels. None appeared on any registry. None carried Council observers. None would be visible to conventional sensors. A new strike force of these Spectre-class vessels was deployed to the edge of human space. Their mission to create a buffer zone between Earth's colonies and the Vraxian Empire. They would operate entirely in phase shift mode, appearing as nothing more than occasional sensor ghosts easily dismissed as equipment malfunctions. On the bridge of the Phantom, Captain Marie Foster reviewed final mission parameters with her crew. We deploy in pairs, she explained. Each pair will patrol a specific sector, maintaining phase shift at all times. If Vraxian forces are detected, you are authorized to use dimensional disruptors on their propulsion and weapon systems. For larger vessels, deploy phase bubbles to remove them from battle entirely. Lieutenant Grace Wilson, the ship's tactical officer, studied the patrol routes. What about Council observers? They'll be all over the conventional fleet. That's the beauty of our strategy, Marie replied. Our conventional fleet will maintain a defensive posture exactly as the Council expects. They'll detect the Vraxian approach, sound the alarm, and prepare for what looks like a hopeless battle. The observers will see everything but understand nothing. Meanwhile, we'll neutralize the threat before it ever reaches our defensive line. The Vraxians, still unaware of exactly what had happened at Proxima Centauri, launched their second larger offensive. Their fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Tau Ceti system, home to 3 human colony worlds. Their sensors showed minimal defenses, exactly as expected. The Vraxian commander gave the order to advance, confident that this time there would be no mysterious malfunctions. This time they would crush the human colonies and force Earth to surrender. But as their vanguard fleet moved forward, something inexplicable happened. Ship after ship found itself suddenly surrounded by shimmering energy fields. Their hulls became translucent communications. Failed weapon systems went offline. Engines stopped responding. The crews could see each other through viewports, but could no longer interact with normal space or with each other. Throughout the massive fleet, panic spread as vessels simply disappeared from sensors, with no explanation, no weapons fire, no energy signatures. The Vraxian commander watched in horror as his mighty armada was systematically neutralized without a single shot being fired. The phase shift vessels moved through the Vraxian fleet like ghosts, untouchable, undetectable. Their crews worked with practiced precision, creating phase bubbles around enemy ships, methodically removing them from the battle. Without firing a single conventional weapon, they neutralized an invasion force of over 300 vessels. When the human defensive line finally came into sensor range of the remaining Vraxian ships, they found themselves facing only a fraction of the expected enemy force. The Council observers aboard human vessels watched in confusion as the Vraxians turned and fled. Without engaging on Earth, the military command waited for the inevitable Council reaction. It wasn't long in coming. The head of the Council Security Committee herself arrived at the main Earth Diplomatic Center, demanding explanations. General Clark met with her, maintaining the same calm demeanor as before. "We're as surprised as you are," she told the ancient Arcturian. "Perhaps the Vraxians are experiencing some sort of widespread technical issue with their fleet." The Arcturian's multifaceted eyes studied the human with obvious suspicion. 300. Vraxian ships do not simply malfunction simultaneously. General, something is happening, and I believe Earth is responsible. Clark spread her hands in a gesture of innocence. "The Council has observers on every one of our military vessels. They've confirmed. We followed all restrictions. None of our ships fired a shot. The Vraxians turned and ran before we even engaged." The frustration was evident in the Arcturian's vibrating voice patterns. "You've developed something, haven't you? Something that operates outside our understanding of conventional warfare." Clark's expression remained neutral. "I can only repeat what I've already stated. Earth has complied with all." 6 months after the Council's ban, representatives from every major galactic power gathered for an emergency summit. The topic: humanity's apparent ability to neutralize entire battle fleets without firing a shot. The Grand Council chamber on the neutral world of Arcturus Prime buzzed with tension. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia now regarded each other with suspicion and fear. The impossible had happened. A newcomer race, humans, had somehow bypassed the carefully balanced rules of engagement that had maintained stability across the galaxy. Dr. Rebecca Turner, Earth's chief diplomatic officer, addressed the assembly with calculated composure. "We understand your concerns," she began. "But let me be clear. Earth has fully complied with the combat restrictions imposed upon us. We have not employed any weapons or combat tactics as defined by Galactic Council Statute 5293. Then how do you explain the complete neutralization of 2 Vraxian battle groups?" demanded the Vraxian High Commander, his scaled skin flushing with anger. 300 of our finest vessels simply vanished. Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. "We didn't neutralize them. We simply relocated them to an adjacent dimensional plane. They remain completely intact, and we're prepared to return them to normal space once assurances are made regarding the safety of our colonies." The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The head of the council, an ancient being from the Arcturian collective, raised her many jointed limbs for silence. This technology, she intoned, her voice resonating through the chamber. It operates outside our established protocols because we never imagined such manipulation of reality was possible. Precisely. Rebecca nodded. Your band forced us to look beyond conventional combat. You told us we couldn't fight you. Never said we couldn't change the nature of space itself in the observation gallery. Commander Olivia Harmon watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. The USS Defiance, now retrofitted with phase shift technology, orbited the Council homeworld, a not-so-subtle reminder of humanity's new capabilities. Beside her, Admiral Porter reviewed the terms of the new treaty being proposed. They're creating an entirely new classification for dimensional manipulation technology, she noted, with significant restrictions. Restrictions we helped write, Olivia reminded her. Limitations. We already know how to work around if necessary. The Admiral allowed herself a rare smile. It's remarkable how quickly they've shifted from banning us to trying to regulate us. The final agreement, signed 3 days later, recognized humanity's right to self-defense through non-conventional spatial manipulation. More importantly, it established Earth as a technological power that could no longer be dismissed or controlled through arbitrary restrictions. As the human delegation prepared to return home, Dr. Blackwood shared a private moment with Commander Harmon on the Defiance's observation deck. Do you think they understand what we've really done? Susan asked, gazing out at the stars. Olivia considered the question carefully. They understand we found a loophole in their rules. What they don't yet grasp is that we've fundamentally changed how power is balanced in the galaxy. Susan nodded. Phase shift technology is just the beginning. Now that we're looking beyond conventional physics for solutions, the possibilities are endless. Olivia finished. They tried to write us out of the story. Instead, we changed the narrative entirely. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kelly Wright monitored the phase shift systems as the Defiance prepared to return to Earth. We've come a long way from thinking we were doomed 6 months ago, she remarked. Captain Lisa Monroe, now commanding the Defiance, smiled. The Council thought they were putting us in our place by banning us from space combat. They never considered we might simply redefine what combat means. Through the view screen, they could see the massive Council station slowly rotating against the backdrop of stars. The station's sensors would detect the Defiance powering up its conventional drives, but would have no way of knowing that the ship was simultaneously activating its phase shift system. Ready for dimensional shift? Kelly asked, her fingers poised above the controls. Whenever you are. Lisa nodded. The Defiance shimmered briefly, then seemed to dissolve like mist in sunlight. To the Council observers, the ship appeared to engage its conventional drives and move away from the station. But in reality, it had already shifted partially out of normal space-time, becoming a ghost that could travel undetected at speeds no conventional vessel could match in the Phase Coordination Center beneath Titan's icy surface. Admiral Porter addressed the assembled leaders of Project Shadowcast. Phase 2 begins today, she announced. We've secured our right to exist. Now we begin expanding human presence throughout the galaxy. On the main screen, a map of nearby star systems appeared, highlighting dozens of worlds previously deemed too dangerous for human colonization, due to their proximity to Vraxian territory. With phase shift technology, these worlds are now within our reach. Porter continued. Our colony ships can travel undetected. Our outpost can remain hidden from conventional sensors. We can establish a human presence far beyond what any other species believes possible. Dr. Molly Davis stepped forward. We've also made a breakthrough in applying phase technology to fixed installations, she reported. We can now create permanent phase fields around entire settlements, making them undetectable to conventional scans and immune to conventional attacks. The implications were enormous. Humanity could expand throughout the galaxy, establishing colonies that existed partially out of phase with normal spacetime. Invisible, untouchable by those who might wish them harm. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Porter shared a private word with Commander Harmon. The Council believes they've contained us by creating new regulations that will stay within the boundaries they've established. Olivia smiled. That's always been their mistake, hasn't it? Thinking they can contain human ingenuity. With rules and regulations, Porter nodded. The phase shift technology has given us freedom from their constraints, but it's what comes next that truly matters. We've learned to think differently, to see beyond conventional limitations. That's the real victory here. Across human space, the news spread quickly. The ban intended to diminish humanity had instead spurred a technological revolution that had elevated Earth to a new position of power in the galactic community. No longer were humans seen as newcomers to be controlled and directed. Now they were innovators who had fundamentally changed the rules of the game. In research facilities throughout the solar system, scientists and engineers built upon the breakthrough of phase shift technology, exploring new applications that went far beyond military use, transportation, energy production, exploration, all transformed by the ability to manipulate dimensional boundaries. The Varaxians eventually received their ship's back crews intact, but pride, severely damaged. The once aggressive empire now regarded humans with a mixture of fear and respect, requesting formal peace negotiations for the first time in their long history. The Council, too, had been transformed. By trying to limit humanity, they had unleashed something far more powerful: the human capacity to think beyond established boundaries, to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. As the Defiance reappeared in Earth orbit, Olivia stood on the bridge watching her home planet grow larger in the view screen. "Everything looks different now," she remarked. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "Earth hasn't changed. We see possibilities now that we never imagined before." Kelly checked the ship's systems as they prepared to dock. Phase shift technology stable. "All systems nominal," she reported, then added with a smile, "Ready to rewrite more rules." "Commander." Olivia smiled. "That's what humans do best, isn't it? When someone tells us we can't do something, we don't just find a way around their rules. We create entirely new ones. That's our true power, not weapons or ships or technology, but our ability to change the game itself." As Earth turned below them, Olivia felt a sense of pride and anticipation. The Council had tried to ban humans from space combat, thinking it would diminish them. Instead, it had launched humanity into a new era of possibility. They had not just survived, they had transformed, and this was only the beginning, the end.